I never thought a single laugh could destroy 8 years of marriage. But as I stare at these divorce papers scattered across my kitchen table, I realize that sometimes one moment of weakness can unravel everything you've built. My name is Zelda Morland, and this is how I lost the best man I ever knew, because I couldn't let go of the worst. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The house looked absolutely stunning. I'd spent weeks planning my 32nd birthday party, transforming our suburban home into something worthy of a magazine spread. Fairy lights twinkled from every corner, the dining table groaned under the weight of catered appetizers, and our living room buzzed with conversation and laughter. "Zelda, darling, you've outdone yourself." My father Mark swept me into a hug, his expensive cologne mixing with the scent of vanilla candles. "This party is incredible. You always did know how to throw a celebration." I beamed at the compliment, smoothing down my emerald green dress. Everything had to be perfect tonight. All my colleagues from the elementary school where I taught, our neighbors, family members, and old friends filled every room. The only thing that would make this evening complete was, well, look who's still throwing the best parties in town. My heart skipped as that familiar voice reached my ears. Graham Archer stood in the doorway, his sandy hair perfectly tousled, wearing that crooked smile that had captured my attention 15 years ago in college. He looked exactly the same, maybe even better, with a few distinguished lines around his green eyes. "Graham!" I practically squealed, rushing over to embrace him. "I can't believe you made it. I wasn't sure you'd gotten my invitation." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, birthday girl." His arms lingered around my waist just a moment too long. "You look absolutely radiant. Marriage clearly agrees with you." From across the room, I caught Ethan's eye. My husband stood near the kitchen doorway, his jaw tight as he watched our reunion. At 35, Ethan had the quiet, steady presence of someone who solved problems for a living. His work as an IT consultant suited his methodical nature perfectly, but right now, his usually calm demeanor showed cracks of tension. "Ethan, honey, come meet Graham," I called out, my voice bright and cheerful. "We went to college together." Ethan approached slowly, his movements deliberate. "We've actually met before," he said evenly, extending his hand. "At our wedding, remember?" "Of course." Graham's handshake seemed overly firm. "The lucky man who swept our Zelda off her feet. How could I forget?" The word "our" hung in the air like smoke. I felt my cheeks flush, but covered it with a laugh. "Oh, you two. Come on, let's get some drinks and mingle. This is supposed to be a celebration." As the evening progressed, I found myself gravitating toward Graham's magnetic presence. He had everyone in stitches with stories from his job in marketing, his travels, his adventures. Even my usually reserved mother-in-law, Janice, cracked a smile at his anecdotes. "Remember that time in college when we got locked out of the dorm after the Halloween party?" Graham nudged me playfully. "Zelda here convinced the security guard that we were method actors practicing for a play about homeless people." "I can't believe that actually worked." My friend Karen Lou laughed, raising her wine glass. "Zelda, you were always so creative with your explanations." "Still is," Ethan muttered under his breath, but only I caught it. The party hit its peak around 10 o'clock. Everyone had loosened up, the wine was flowing freely, and the conversation had turned to embarrassing college stories. That's when Graham decided to drop his bombshell. "You know," he said loudly enough for half the room to hear, "I have to hand it to Ethan here. It takes a secure man to marry someone knowing he's essentially the replacement model." The room went quiet for a heartbeat. I felt my face burn, but before I could think of how to respond, nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "Graham!" I swatted his arm playfully, my voice pitched high with forced humor. "You're terrible." "What? I'm just saying, if things don't work out, I'm still available for consultation on the original version." He winked at me, and more laughter erupted from our audience. I glanced at Ethan, expecting to see him rolling his eyes or shaking his head with good-natured annoyance. Instead, his face had gone completely pale. His hands were clenched at his sides, and something raw and hurt flickered in his dark eyes. "Ethan, honey, you know he's just joking around," I said quickly, but my husband was already backing toward the hallway. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I need some air." He disappeared upstairs, and I felt a momentary pang of guilt. But then Mark boomed out another laugh and clapped Graham on the shoulder. "I like this one, Zelda. At least he's got a sense of humor about things. Some people take themselves too seriously these days." "Absolutely," Karen agreed, shooting a meaningful look toward the staircase. "Life's too short not to laugh at ourselves, right?" I found myself nodding along, pushing down the uncomfortable feeling in my stomach. "Right. Ethan just needs a minute. He's been working so hard lately, he's probably just tired." But as the party continued without him, I couldn't shake the image of his face when Graham made that joke. The hurt in his eyes had been real, unmistakable. Still, when Graham leaned over to whisper something funny in my ear, I laughed right along with everyone else. After all, it was just a harmless joke between old friends, wasn't it? 3 weeks after the party, I found myself staying late at Jefferson Elementary more and more often. The excuse was always the same: extra grading, lesson planning, parent conferences, but the truth was more complicated. "Mrs. Morland, you're here late again," Principal Martinez commented as she locked her office door. "Don't you have a family waiting at home?" "Just finishing up some reports," I replied, not looking up from my computer screen. "You know how it is with the state assessments coming up." She nodded sympathetically and left me alone in the empty hallway. As soon as her footsteps faded, I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Graham's contact. Still at school. "Coffee?" His response came immediately. "Absolutely. Luigi's in 20. Luigi's Italian restaurant had become our regular meeting spot. Tucked away on a side street downtown, it was far enough from our neighborhood that I didn't worry about running into anyone we knew. The dim lighting and cozy booths made it feel intimate, almost romantic. "You look stressed," Graham observed as I slid into our usual booth. He'd already ordered my favorite, a cappuccino with extra foam. "It's just work," I lied, stirring sugar into my coffee. "And things at home have been tense since the party." "Still giving you the silent treatment?" I nodded, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "He barely talks to me anymore. When he does, it's just practical stuff. Pick up Ella from school, pay the electric bill, your turn to do laundry. It's like I'm living with a polite stranger." Graham reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "I'm sorry, Zelda. I didn't mean to cause problems with that joke. I was just trying to lighten the mood." "No, it's not your fault," I said quickly. "He's been distant for months, even before the party. I think he resents how hard I work, how much time I spend on my career. He wants me to be some perfect housewife who has dinner ready at 6 every night." "You deserve better than that," Graham said softly. "You're brilliant, funny, beautiful. You shouldn't have to dim your light for anyone." His thumb traced gentle circles on my knuckles, and I felt a familiar flutter in my chest. This was dangerous territory, but it felt so good to be appreciated, to be seen as more than just a wife and mother. "Tell me about your latest project," I said, changing the subject to safer ground. "You mentioned something about a campaign for that tech startup." As Graham launched into an animated description of his work, I found myself genuinely engaged for the first time in weeks. He made everything sound exciting, full of possibility. With him, I felt like the person I used to be, spontaneous, creative, alive. We talked until the restaurant started closing around us. As we walked to our cars, Graham caught my hand again. "Same time next week?" he asked. I knew I should say no. I knew these meetings were crossing a line, even if we weren't doing anything technically wrong. But the thought of going back to Ethan's cold silence, to another evening of stilted conversation and careful politeness, made my chest tight with loneliness. "Yes," I whispered. "Same time." At home, Ethan was already in bed, his back turned to my side. I changed into my pajamas quietly, slipping under the covers without disturbing him. "How was the parent conference?" he asked suddenly, his voice neutral. "Fine," I replied automatically. "Mrs. Peterson is concerned about Tommy's reading level, but I think with some extra attention he'll catch up." Ethan didn't turn around. "You've been having a lot of late meetings lately." "It's a busy time of year," I said, my heart racing. "You know how it is." He was quiet for so long I thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, "I called the school today around 4:30. They said you'd already left." My mouth went dry. I stopped by the store on the way home. We needed milk. The milk in our fridge expires next week." I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling. How could I explain without making things worse? How could I tell him that I needed those conversations with Graham, that they were the only thing keeping me sane in this suffocating routine we called marriage? "Ethan, Good night, Zelda." His tone made it clear the conversation was over. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could think about was Graham's warm smile and the way he made me feel like myself again. The next morning, Ethan was gone before I woke up. He'd made coffee for himself, but not for me, a small omission that somehow felt enormous. As I got Ella ready for school, I tried to push down the guilt gnawing at my stomach. "Daddy seemed sad this morning," Ella observed as I braided her dark hair. At 6, she was already too perceptive for her own good. "Daddy's just tired from work, sweetheart," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. "You know how hard he works to take care of us. Are you and Daddy fighting?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "No, baby, we're not fighting. Sometimes grown-ups just need space to think, that's all." But even as I said it, I wondered if I was lying to both of us. The annual Jefferson Elementary family picnic was supposed to be a fun, stress-free event. Held at Riverside Park every May, it gave parents and teachers a chance to connect outside the classroom while kids played games and burned off energy. I'd been looking forward to it for weeks, especially since Graham had mentioned he might stop by. His nephew attended our school. "Beautiful day for a picnic," Ethan commented as we spread our blanket on the grass. He'd been making an effort lately, suggesting we attend together as a family. I appreciated the gesture, even if things still felt strained between us. "Perfect weather," I agreed, watching Ella run off to join her classmates at the face painting station. "She's been talking about this all week." Ethan smiled, the first genuine expression I'd seen from him in days. "Remember last year when she insisted on getting a butterfly painted on each cheek? She looked like a rainbow exploded on her face. And she refused to wash it off for 3 days," I laughed, feeling a moment of connection with my husband. Maybe we could work through this rough patch after all. That optimism lasted exactly 47 minutes. "Zelda, there's my favorite teacher." Graham's voice boomed across the park as he approached our blanket. He looked effortlessly handsome in khaki shorts and a navy polo shirt, his hair catching the sunlight. "Graham," I jumped up, perhaps a little too eagerly. "I wasn't sure you'd make it." "Wouldn't miss it. Tommy's been talking about this picnic for weeks." He gestured toward a boy with sandy hair who was already racing toward the playground. Then his attention turned to Ethan, who had risen more slowly. "Ethan, good to see you again." "Graham." Ethan's handshake was brief, professional. "Mind if I join you folks? I didn't think to bring a blanket." Before Ethan could respond, I was already making room. "Of course, the more the merrier, right?" What followed was an hour of increasingly uncomfortable conversation. Graham regaled us with stories from his recent business trip to California, his weekend adventures, his latest dating escapades. He was charming, funny, and completely oblivious to, or perhaps deliberately ignoring, Ethan's growing discomfort. "So Ethan," Graham said during a lull in conversation, "Zelda tells me you're in IT. That must be stable work." The way he said stable made it sound like a euphemism for boring. "It is," Ethan replied evenly. "I enjoy solving problems, helping businesses run more efficiently. It's rewarding work. I'm sure it is. Very practical. Zelda always did need someone practical to balance out her creative side. Graham's smile was warm, but there was something calculating in his eyes. She's too much of a free spirit to be tied down by mundane concerns. I felt heat rise in my cheeks. Graham, you make me sound like some kind of flighty artist. I'm an elementary school teacher. It doesn't get much more practical than that. Oh, but you're so much more than that, he insisted, his gaze intense. Remember that poetry you used to write? Those stories? You had such dreams back then. That was a long time ago, Ethan said quietly. Not that long, Graham countered. What, 10 years? 12? People don't change that much, do they, Zelda? I felt caught between them, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, but flattered by Graham's attention. I still write sometimes. Just little things. Ethan's head turned sharply. You do? It's nothing serious, I said quickly. Just some poems, short stories, silly stuff. I'd love to read them sometime, Graham said. I bet they're brilliant. The tension was becoming unbearable when my father appeared, carrying a plate of barbecue and wearing his typical jovial expression. There's my birthday girl, and Graham, good to see you again. Mark settled onto our blanket without invitation, immediately launching into a story about his golf game that morning. More people began drifting over, Karen and her husband, some colleagues from school, neighbors from our street. Our quiet family picnic had somehow become a social gathering, with Graham at the center of attention. That's when he decided to escalate things. You know, Graham announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. I was just thinking about the old days. Zelda and I used to come to this very park when we were dating. We'd sit by the lake and plan out our whole future together. The conversation around us quieted. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and something else, a treacherous flutter of nostalgia. That's sweet, Karen said, glancing between Graham and me with obvious interest. Young love is so romantic. It really was, Graham continued, his eyes locked on mine. We had such big plans. Travel the world, write the great American novel, live this amazing bohemian life. Of course, life has a way of leading us down different paths. His gaze shifted meaningfully to Ethan, then back to me. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd stuck to the original plan. But then again, he grinned widely, maybe it's not too late to revisit some of those dreams. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes on us, waiting for my response. Ethan had gone completely still beside me, his face unreadable. I should have shut it down. I should have changed the subject, made some joke about youthful foolishness, redirected attention to the children playing nearby. Instead, I heard myself laugh, a bright tinkling sound that seemed to echo across the park. Oh, Graham, you're such a dreamer, I said, but my tone was fond, indulgent. Always living in the past. Some things are worth remembering, he replied softly, and the intimacy in his voice made several people exchange glances. That's when Ethan stood up abruptly. I'm going to check on Ella, he said, his voice carefully controlled. She's fine, honey, I called after him. She's just playing with her friends. But he was already walking away, his shoulders rigid with tension. I watched him go with a mixture of guilt and irritation. Why couldn't he just relax? Why did he have to make everything so dramatic? Don't mind him, Mark said dismissively. He's always been a bit too serious. You can't take a joke. You miss half the fun in life. Absolutely, Karen agreed, refilling her wineglass from the bottle she'd brought. Life's too short to walk around with a stick up your ass. Everyone laughed, including me. But as I watched Ethan's retreating figure, something cold settled in my stomach. He wasn't just walking toward the playground. He was walking toward our car, with Ella's hand in his. Looks like Daddy's ready to go home, Graham observed with amusement. Hope I didn't scare him off. He's probably just tired, I said automatically, but my eyes were fixed on Ethan as he buckled Ella into her car seat. We had a busy morning. I expected him to come back and get me, or at least wave goodbye. Instead, I watched our car pull out of the parking lot and disappear down the street, leaving me stranded at the picnic with a group of people who were suddenly looking at me with a mixture of pity and curiosity. "Well," Graham said cheerfully, "looks like you need a ride home." I didn't get home until nearly 8 o'clock that evening. Graham had insisted on taking me to dinner after the picnic, and I'd been too flustered and angry to refuse. How dare Ethan abandon me like that? How dare he make a scene in front of all our friends and colleagues? The house was eerily quiet when I walked in. Ella's toys were neatly put away. The dishes from lunch had been washed and dried, and there was no sign of my husband or daughter. "Ethan," I called out. "Ella, where are you?" No response. I climbed the stairs, checking first Ella's room. Empty, with her bed uncharacteristically made. Our bedroom was also vacant, though I noticed several of Ethan's clothes missing from the closet. Panic began to set in. I grabbed my phone and dialed Ethan's number, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, then a third time, my hands shaking as I pressed the buttons. Finally, on the fourth attempt, he answered. "What do you want, Zelda?" His voice was flat, emotionless, and it chilled me to the bone. "Where are you? Where's Ella? I came home and the house was empty." "We're at my mother's." "Your mother's? Why? Ethan, what's going on?" "I think you know exactly what's going on." I sank onto our bed, my legs suddenly weak. "If this is about the picnic, you're completely overreacting. Graham was just being friendly, telling old stories. There's nothing wrong with that." "Nothing wrong." He repeated the words slowly, as if testing their weight. "You sat there and let another man talk about your romantic past, about revisiting old dreams, and you think there's nothing wrong with that. It was harmless conversation. You're being paranoid and jealous over nothing." "Am I?" His voice was getting colder by the minute. "Then why don't you explain where you've been for the past 4 hours?" Graham gave me a ride home. We stopped for dinner because you stranded me at the park like some kind of teenager having a tantrum." "Dinner? With Graham?" "Yes, dinner. As friends. Adults having a normal conversation, which is apparently something you've forgotten how to do." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations. "I want you to stop seeing him," Ethan said finally. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. No more coffee dates, no more cozy dinners, no more late-night text messages that you think I don't notice." My heart hammered against my ribs. "You've been checking my phone?" "I don't need to check your phone, Zelda. You're not as subtle as you think you are. The question is, are you going to be honest with me, or are we going to keep playing this game?" I felt cornered, defensive. There's no game. Graham is an old friend, and I'm not going to let you dictate who I can and can't see. That's not how marriage works. "You're right," he said quietly. "That's not how marriage works. Marriage works on trust, respect, and consideration for your partner's feelings. All things that seem to be in short supply lately." "Don't you dare lecture me about marriage," I snapped. "You've been cold and distant for months. You barely talk to me, you show no interest in my life, and then you get upset when I find someone who actually wants to spend time with me. Someone who wants to spend time with you, or someone who wants to get you back into bed?" The accusation hung in the air like a slap. I felt my face flush with anger and something that might have been guilt. "How dare you suggest—" "I'm not suggesting anything, Zelda. I'm asking you directly. Are you having an affair with Graham Archer?" "No." The word came out louder than I'd intended. "No, I am not having an affair. We're friends, Ethan. Just friends." Friends don't look at each other the way you two were looking at each other today. Friends don't have secret meetings and lie about where they've been. I never lied. "You told me you were at a parent conference last Tuesday. The school said you left at 3:30. My mouth went dry. I did have errands to run." "Stop." His voice cut through my stammering. "Just stop. Every word out of your mouth is making this worse." I could hear voices in the background. His mother's house was apparently full of people. The humiliation of knowing that his entire family was witnessing our marriage fall apart made me feel sick. "Ethan, please. Come home. We can talk about this rationally, without an audience." "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "What about Ella? She needs both her parents." "Ella is fine. She's having a sleepover with her grandmother, and she thinks it's a big adventure. I'm not going to let our problems affect her any more than they already have." "Our problems?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean your paranoid jealousy and controlling behavior?" "I mean your emotional affair and complete disregard for our family." The words hit me like physical blows. "It's not an affair. Nothing has happened between us." "Yet," he said quietly. "But we both know where this is heading, don't we?" I wanted to deny it, to protest his unfair characterization of my friendship with Graham. But something in his tone, resigned, almost sad, made the fight drain out of me. "Ethan, I love you. I love our family. I don't want to lose what we have." "Then prove it. Cut contact with him. No more meetings, no more phone calls, no more secret conversations. Choose your marriage." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the ultimatum. "And if I don't? Then I guess we'll know where we stand." The line went dead, leaving me alone in our empty house, with the echo of his words ringing in my ears. 2 days passed before Ethan came home, and when he did, it was only to collect more clothes and some work files. He moved through the house like a ghost, polite but distant, speaking only when necessary. "When are you coming back?" I asked as he packed his laptop bag. "I don't know," he replied without looking at me. "I need time to think." "About what? About us?" "About whether there still is an us." That afternoon, desperate to talk to someone who would understand, I called Graham. "Meet me at Luigi's," I said when he answered. "I need to see you." "Of course, are you okay? You sound upset." "Just, please, I'll be there in 20 minutes. I found him waiting in our usual booth, concern written across his handsome features. The moment I sat down, the tears I'd been holding back for days finally spilled over. Hey, he murmured, reaching for my hands. "What's wrong?" "Ethan knows," I whispered. "About us meeting, about everything. He's staying at his mother's house, and I think he's going to leave me." "Shh, it's okay." Graham slid around to my side of the booth, pulling me against his chest. "It's going to be okay." "No, it's not," I sobbed. "My marriage is falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it." "Maybe," he said softly, stroking my hair, "it's not supposed to be fixed. Maybe this is the universe telling you that you're meant for something different." I pulled back to look at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe Ethan was just a chapter in your story, not the whole book. Maybe it's time to start writing a new chapter." His hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away my tears. "I never stopped loving you, Zelda. All these years, through every relationship, every date, every woman I tried to replace you with, none of them were you." "Graham, I know the timing is complicated, but sometimes life is messy. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." He was leaning closer, and I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth of his breath on my face. For a moment I was 22 again, young and reckless and in love with possibilities. "I can't," I whispered, but I didn't pull away. "Yes, you can," he murmured. "You just have to be brave enough to choose happiness." His lips were inches from mine when my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at the screen and saw Ethan's name. "Check your email." My blood turned to ice. "I have to go," I said, scrambling out of the booth. "Zelda, wait." But I was already running for the door, my heart pounding with dread. At home, I opened my laptop with shaking hands and logged into my email. There was a message from Ethan with no subject line and a single attachment. When I clicked on it, my world collapsed. It was a legal document, a petition for divorce. Grounds: irreconcilable differences, Custody arrangement, joint custody with primary residence to be determined. Division of assets, to be negotiated. But that wasn't the worst part. Attached to the legal papers were printed screenshots of text messages between Graham and me, photos of us at Luigi's taken from outside the restaurant, copies of my work schedule showing the discrepancies between when I said I was staying late and when I actually left. He'd been collecting evidence. For weeks, maybe months, my husband had been quietly documenting my betrayal, building a case against me with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. My phone rang. Ethan. "Did you get it?" he asked. "Ethan, please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. It's all right there in black and white. Those text messages, they're not what they look like. You never what? Never lied to me? Never chose another man over your husband? Never put our daughter through the stress of watching her parents' marriage disintegrate?" Each word was like a knife. I made mistakes, but I never cheated. I never crossed that line. You crossed the line the moment you started lying to me. You crossed it when you chose his company over mine, his validation over our marriage. The physical part is just the final step in a process you started months ago. I was crying now, ugly sobs that made it hard to speak. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. Please don't do this. Please give me another chance. I gave you a chance 2 days ago. I asked you to choose our marriage. Instead, you ran straight to him. How did you... Were you following me?" "I didn't need to follow you, Zelda. You're predictable. When you're upset, you run to the person who tells you what you want to hear instead of what you need to hear. That's not fair. What's not fair is putting our daughter through this. What's not fair is making me question 8 years of marriage because you couldn't let go of some college fantasy. What's not fair is forcing me to become the kind of person who hires private investigators and documents his wife's betrayal." The words hit me like physical blows. "You hired someone to follow me. I hired someone to get me the truth since you seemed incapable of providing it." I stared at the papers spread across my kitchen table. Evidence of every lie, every secret meeting, every moment I'd chosen Graham over my marriage. The weight of my choices crashed over me like a wave. "What happens now?" I whispered. "Now you sign the papers, and we try to minimize the damage to Ella. Now we figure out how to co-parent while living separate lives. Now we both move on." I don't want to move on. I want to fix this. Some things can't be fixed, Zelda. Some betrayals are too deep, some trust too broken. I'm done trying to compete with a memory for my own wife's attention. The line went dead, and I was alone with the wreckage of my marriage spread out before me like a crime scene. Every text message, every photo, every lie documented in careful detail by the man I'd promised to love and honor. For the first time, I saw my actions through Ethan's eyes, not as harmless friendship or innocent nostalgia, but as a systematic betrayal of everything we'd built together. I saw the pain I'd caused, the trust I'd shattered, the family I'd destroyed with my selfishness and lies. But it was too late for regrets. The papers were signed, the evidence collected, the damage done. All I could do now was face the consequences of my choices and hope that someday, somehow, I might find a way to forgive myself, even if Ethan never would. The divorce proceedings moved with ruthless efficiency. Ethan's lawyer was thorough, professional, and armed with enough evidence to paint me as an unfaithful wife who had prioritized an emotional affair over her family's well-being. My own attorney, recommended by Karen, seemed overwhelmed by the mountain of documentation Ethan had compiled. "Mrs. Morland," she said during our second meeting, "I have to be honest with you. Your husband has built an exceptionally strong case. The text messages, the photographs, the timeline of deception, it's all very compelling evidence of marital misconduct." "But I never actually cheated," I insisted for the 100th time. "Doesn't that matter?" Emotional affairs can be just as damaging to a marriage as physical ones, and in some states, they're grounds for fault-based divorce. The judge is going to look at the pattern of behavior, the lies, the secret meetings, the emotional intimacy with another man, and draw their own conclusions. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late June. I'd barely slept the night before, my stomach churning with anxiety about seeing Ethan again, about the possibility of losing precious time with Ella. When I arrived at the courthouse, Ethan was already there with his legal team. He looked composed, professional in his navy suit, every inch the responsible father, fighting for his daughter's best interests. Beside him sat his mother Janice, her expression coldly disapproving when our eyes met. All rise for the Honourable Judge Patricia Chen. The proceedings were clinical, methodical. Ethan's lawyer presented their evidence with surgical precision. Bank statements showing unusual expenditures, phone records revealing the frequency of my communications with Graham, testimony from witnesses who had observed our behaviour at the party and picnic. Then came the character witnesses. "Your Honour," Janice said when called to testify, "my son is a devoted father who has always put his daughter's needs first. He coaches her soccer team, helps with homework every night, and has never missed a school event or doctor's appointment. Meanwhile, his wife was spending her evenings with another man while claiming to work late." My father Mark tried to defend me, arguing that I was a dedicated mother and teacher who had simply made some poor choices, but his testimony felt weak compared to the parade of witnesses Ethan had assembled. Colleagues who confirmed the discrepancies in my work schedule, neighbours who had seen Graham's car in our driveway when Ethan wasn't home, even the principal from Ella's school who testified about Ethan's consistent involvement in her education. The most damaging moment came when they played a recording I didn't even know existed, a voicemail I'd left for Graham during a particularly difficult evening with Ethan. "I can't keep pretending everything is fine," my voice echoed through the courtroom. "I feel like I'm suffocating in this marriage. You're the only person who makes me feel alive anymore." I watched Ethan's face as my words filled the room, saw the pain flicker across his features before his expression went carefully blank again. Beside him, his sister Tessa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. When it was over, the judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Joint custody as requested, but with primary residence going to Ethan. I would have Ella every other weekend and one evening per week, with additional time during school holidays. The court finds that while Mrs. Morland is not an unfit parent, her recent choices demonstrate a pattern of deception and prioritizing personal desires over family stability, Judge Chen announced. The child's best interests are served by maintaining primary residence with the parent who has shown consistent reliability and commitment to her well-being. I felt the words like physical blows. Every other weekend. One evening per week. I was being reduced to a part-time parent because of my mistakes. After the hearing, I found myself alone in the courthouse hallway while Ethan conferred with his lawyers. When he finally approached me, his expression was unreadable. "I want you to know this isn't about revenge," he said quietly. "It's about what's best for Ella." "Keeping her away from her mother is what's best for her," I asked bitterly. "Keeping her in a stable environment is what's best for her. You made your choices, Zelda. Now we all have to live with the consequences." He started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth, I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. I hope it was worth it." The finality in his voice made my chest tight with grief. "Ethan, wait." But he was already gone, walking toward his family with his shoulders straight and his head held high. The man I'd married, the father of my child, the person who had loved me unconditionally for 8 years, was walking out of my life forever. That evening, I sat in my empty house. Our house, though it would soon be just mine according to the property settlement, staring at the legal documents that had officially ended my marriage. Every page was a testament to my failures, every signature a reminder of what I'd lost. My phone buzzed with a text from Graham. "How did it go? Want to talk?" For the first time in months, I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in the silence of my choices. 3 days later, Ethan came to collect the last of his belongings. He was efficient, businesslike, treating our shared home like a crime scene to be processed. I watched from the kitchen as he packed up 8 years of memories into cardboard boxes. "I'll have everything out by tomorrow," he said when he noticed me watching. "The moving truck comes at 9. "Where are you going?" "I bought a house across town. Good school district, big backyard for Ella. She'll have her own room, space to play." Of course he had. Even in divorce, Ethan was thinking 3 steps ahead, planning for our daughter's future, while I was still trying to process the present. Can I see her before you go?" He hesitated, then nodded. "She's at my mother's. I'll bring her by tomorrow morning to say goodbye to the house." The next morning, I waited by the window until I saw Ethan's car pull into our driveway. Ella bounded out, her dark hair in pigtails, wearing the yellow sundress I'd bought her for Easter. "Mommy!" She launched herself into my arms, and I held her tight, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Hi, baby. Are you excited about your new house? Daddy says I get to pick the color for my room, and there's a tire swing in the backyard." Her excitement was infectious, and I found myself smiling despite the ache in my chest. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart." We spent an hour walking through the house, Ella chattering about her favorite memories in each room. When it was time to go, she hugged me tight. "I'll see you this weekend, right, Mummy?" "Absolutely. We'll do something special, just you and me." As they drove away, Ethan gave me a single nod through the car window. Not unfriendly, but not warm either. Just acknowledgement between 2 people who had once promised to love each other forever and were now learning to navigate the careful distance of co-parents. I stood in my driveway until their car disappeared around the corner, then walked back into my empty house. The silence was deafening, broken only by the tick of the clock Ethan had left behind. Too heavy to move, he'd said, and he was getting new things for the new house anyway. That afternoon, I found myself cleaning obsessively, as if I could scrub away the evidence of my failed marriage along with the dust and fingerprints. In Ella's room, I discovered a drawing she'd left behind, a crayon picture of our family standing in front of our house, all 3 of us smiling under a bright yellow sun. I sat on her little bed and cried for everything I'd lost, everything I'd thrown away for the illusion of excitement and validation. I cried for Ethan's trust, for Ella's innocence, for the life we'd built that I'd systematically destroyed with my lies and selfishness. When the tears finally stopped, I looked around at the remnants of my old life and made a decision. I couldn't undo my mistakes, couldn't take back the hurt I'd caused, couldn't restore the trust I'd shattered, but I could learn from them. I could be better, for Ella, for myself, for whatever future I was going to build from the ashes of my marriage. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Graham's contact. For a moment I hesitated, remembering his charm, his validation, the way he made me feel special and desired. Then I thought about Ethan's face in the courtroom, about Ella asking if Mommy and Daddy were fighting, about the price of choosing fantasy over reality. I deleted Graham's number and blocked him on all social media. Then I opened my laptop and began typing a letter. Not to send, but to process, to acknowledge, to begin the long work of understanding how I'd become someone I didn't recognize. "Dear Ethan," I wrote, "I know you'll never read this, and I know it's too late for apologies to matter, but I need to say this, even if only to myself. You deserved better. You deserved a wife who chose you every day, who honored your trust, who put our family first. You deserved honesty and loyalty and love without conditions. I'm sorry I wasn't that person. I'm sorry I let you down. I'm sorry I let us all down. I can't change what I did, but I can promise you this. I will spend the rest of my life being the mother Ella deserves, even if I can never again be the wife you deserved. I will learn from my mistakes, face my flaws, and do better. Not because I expect forgiveness or second chances, but because it's the right thing to do. You were the best man I ever knew, and losing you was the consequence of my own choices. I hope someday you find someone who appreciates the gift of your love and never takes it for granted the way I did. With regret and respect, Zelda, I saved the document and closed the laptop, then walked to the window and looked out at the neighborhood where we'd planned to raise our daughter, grow old together, build a lifetime of memories. The house across the street had a for sale sign in the yard, and I wondered if the family moving out was running towards something better or away from something broken. Either way, they were moving forward, and so, finally, was I. 6 months later, I received an envelope in the mail with Ethan's return address. Inside was a single photograph, Ella on her first day of 2nd grade, standing in front of her new school with a gap-toothed grin and a backpack covered in unicorn patches. On the back, in Ethan's careful handwriting, "Thought you'd want to see this. She's doing great." It was a small kindness from a man who owed me nothing, a gesture of grace I hadn't earned, but desperately needed. I put the photo on my refrigerator next to Ella's crayon drawing of our family, a reminder of what I'd lost and what I was still fighting to deserve.